Hey everyone, I wanted to make this quick video to talk about some pretty important things to know before you go ahead and do your Z31 turbo axle upgrade or conversion. So essentially, you want to run the Z31 turbo axles, which are bigger than the factory axles, as well as have a bunch more benefits. But you need to buy and or use this conversion bracket to convert it to the standard output of the old Datsun axle. And you would drop this into the center, weld it, and now you have a bigger flange to bolt on your Z31 turbo axles. Pretty simple. However, there's some pretty minute or critical things you really got to know before you just willy-nilly weld this in there. First, I want to go through a quick demonstration of how this all works. Since I've got everything out of the car, it'll be a pretty nice way to demonstrate how this is going to work, and if you've never seen all of this out of the car. So this is the outer stub. It's got your wheel studs on them, your wheel bolts to here. This is going to go through that assembly on the car, which your spring is part of. You've got some races and bearings here, so that can spin inside of those races. Then you've got the splined section here. That is where this piece comes in. It's got splines in here. It's going to slide on there. And we've got a nut that goes on the back and with a washer. But just for demonstration purposes, we've got a nut that holds that on. So again, this is all spinning freely with these bearings. And then your factory axle bolts using these 4 bolt holes here. Obviously this nut would be further in there, but it's going to bolt to these 4 points. And then this is your basically rotating assembly for the rear end. When you want to upgrade to the Z31 axles, there's not really anything you need to do except you just have to weld this conversion bracket onto the back of here. You're going to drop it into the recessed portion there, weld it up, and then this whole unit is going to go onto the outer stub, and then you just bolt this piece on, and now you've got a bigger flange to bolt on the new axle. I'll also mention, if you didn't already know, those Z31 turbo axles are splined on the one end of them like this. So one end of them has bolts that line up with these. The other end is splined. That will fit right into your 280Z R200 differential. No, not 280Z, but any Datsun R200. So those splines will fit right in. So really, it's kind of like just a plug and play operation. You just need to use this bracket. Okay, enough explaining about what's going on here. Let's get into the important details of getting this job done. So as you can see, all of this is rotating very fast. If you don't weld this bracket on perfectly center, then you're going to create a unbalance, or it's going to be off to one side. You're going to create a major vibration because you're going to have this offset, and your axle is going to bolt to that, and it's going to be going around in an egg shape, which you definitely do not want. I actually did this once. So this is my try or attempt number 2. This would be my attempt number 1 to do this. And everything I'm going to talk about in this video, basically I did not do and or didn't know, and I just welded it up. So when I got the conversion brackets, I basically just dropped them in here. They fit. I welded it up. That's really not what you want to do because, again, just having this offset, there is play in here. If I can hold that bottom still, see that play back and forth? That's quite a bit. Now I think they leave that play on purpose because these flanges here are not perfect. One side can be bigger, and we're going to get into that. But essentially what I did is I just dropped it in here, said it looked good, welded it up, and that's not the right way to do it. We need this centerpiece to be exactly in the center of these 4 bolts. And how do we do that? It would be pretty tough to do that with measuring because we need very precise measurements. And there's not a lot of play here, so it just goes to show you'd have to be using a micrometer and things like that. What I did, I'm going to bring this piece over. This is actually a jig I had turned at a machine shop. I partly work at a machine shop, so I was able to do this. And this is perfectly centered. This shaft here is perfectly centered to this here. This part is the exact same size as the center of this. And I did measure that this hole is center of these 4 bolt holes, which is good. So we can drop this on to this jig. It's a tight fit. And now we can drop this, because this shaft is the same inner diameter of this, fits on very snug, and we can drop this down in there. And this is where the first problem I want to show you is. So the first problem is this flange is not dropping down into this conversion bracket. You can see how it's still raised here, and there is no clearance or tolerance here to slide down. And if you look on the other side, there's a big gap. So let me spin this around, and now the gap's over here. So essentially what this is telling us is I've got the center of this in the center of our conversion plate, and this side of the flange is actually wider than this side. Without this jig, I could have just welded this in the center here, and I would have not been center. This part here would have never been center of these holes because it actually doesn't fit. It needs to be like over here to be perfectly center. If we take a set of calipers here and I go on that side, tighten it up, 0.4815 is about the distance on that one side. If we go to the other side, it doesn't fit. And that is about 0.532. So that just goes to show this flange isn't, equal on each side, which if you just drop it in there, you're not going to get a good match. This isn't a problem with this conversion flange. This is actually a problem with Nissan's manufacturing. So I actually already welded a conversion flange together. This would be just the other side before I started making this video. And I used my jig, and you can see everything lines up centered, and I got it welded. This flange, this actually dropped down into my jig perfectly fine. So this one did not need any modifications to actually get it to sit down in there. So you might encounter that. Your flange might not have a problem like this one. So again, I didn't need to do some sanding because to fix this, I'm going to have to grind this side down. I think it was this side or this side, whichever one. I'm going to have to grind this side down in order to get it to fit down in here perfectly straight. I didn't have to do that with this one. So, it just kind of depends on how your flanges were made from the factory. Now, I'm not really sure how you would center this up without the jig to set this on. Maybe there's some measuring you could do, but you really need to measure from this part here because this is where, everything goes together. So I'm really not sure. That's why I've created the jig. The other thing I want to point out is the back side of here where your axle bolts onto. If we put a flat or straight edge across this, you can see I've got it all the way down on the right side, and there's a gap on the left side. Hopefully you can see that. So this piece isn't exactly perfectly flat across the back of it. Now, I would say that is a problem with the machine work or the creation of this flange. But I will say also, it got worse after I welded it. So even though I preheated it and I took my time and waited, did quite a few tacks, it did get quite a bit worse. So if you look, I'm holding it down on the right side. You can see that gap on the other side is pretty drastic. Unfortunately, look at that. Now I know this is flat, but just for example, if I take this speed square here, I get the same results. I'm holding it down on that right side and there's a gap. And what that's going to do is, if you leave that or don't try and fix it at all, when you bolt your axle to this, your axle is going to be bolted at an angle. You need this perfectly flat so your axle can bolt to it. If it's bolted at an angle, you're again creating a wobbling feature because it's not flat. And so that's going to be another source of somewhere you need to either know about and understand and try and get it corrected. So I'm going to have to take this back to the machine shop and get the back of this turned because I want my axle to be able to bolt onto this perfectly flat. I feel like this whole video is just a long way of saying make sure you weld this perfectly straight in there. I don't really know how else to say it. I mean, I've shown you the one problem that we already encountered with these sides not being or the same width, and you would never know that if you didn't have the jig or take the appropriate measurements, which is why I plan on renting this out for anyone who is doing the upgrade who might want it. But I do want to rent this out to help people out and make sure you get yours straight, because I don't want other people to be like me who have done this once, went through all of the trouble to install it, uninstall it, and when you install it, you get a vibration. And this one is perfectly straight. However, I do need to face the back of it and see if there's not a way I can get this to be balanced. Maybe, somehow balance it so there's not a vibration from, it being unbalanced. So hopefully I covered some things in this video you guys can watch out for. And yeah, thanks for watching. And yeah, see you later.
I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got eyes in the back of my head, I'm seeing. Take me for granted and you know I'm leaving. I'ma take what's mine with the webs I'm weaving. I could take this crowd from seeing to believing. Got a taste for blood and my tongue keeps bleeding from the words I spit. So sharp, so freezing, so cold. Behold, frostbite they feeling. I could tear you apart or I could go heal them. Don't believe in fate, don't believe in ceilings. I just need a taste and my mind starts peeling. I don't pace myself, I grind on kneeling. Got lust for change, I just love the feeling. I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward.